a story, a parable, loaded with teachings that the Lord Jesus told, and I will share here with you. This parable speaks about some who trusted themselves, believing they were righteous, and despised others. Pay attention. He already gave the lesson about the parable before sharing it. This parable is about those who trust themselves in their own justice. In other words, they are righteous in their own eyes. They think to be their own judges and solicitor, advocate, lawyer. They never accuse themselves, but defend themselves. And they judge favorably towards themselves. And this parable is about these people. Let's understand the parable. Jesus said in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, from verse 9, he said, "Two men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee, and the other a tax collector." Let's understand this. Two men went to God. Two men are seeking for an interaction with God. They go to the temple, and he shows the contrast between both. One is a Pharisee, religious, knowledgeable of the divine laws, a member of the religious elite, and was seen by everyone as a holy man, close to men, an intercessor. "I'm holier than you," was what the Pharisee shone through his title, his garments, the way he behaved. The other man was a publican, a Jew who worked for Rome. In those days, Israel was subjected to the Roman Empire. A Jew who worked for Rome to collect taxes from his Jewish brothers. So the publican was known as the scum of society because he was seen as a traitor. You are helping our oppressors. You are taking out from us and gaining with this to help our oppressors. So the publican was known as a lowdown, a traitor in that society. So Jesus placed these two men as characters of this story. Both went up to pray at the temple. One who was known as holier than others, and the other known as the worst kind of person. That's it. They went up to the temple to pray. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself. He was standing. There are no words in the Lord Jesus' parables that are by chance. If he said that the Pharisee stood and prayed with himself, this has a meaning. He thought he was worthy to be standing before God. Prayed thus with himself. In other words, he prayed from himself to himself. Like this: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. See the Pharisee's prayer, a man who thought himself to be so righteous. He looked at those around him and thanked God and thanked himself for not being like those people. And he went on saying, I fast twice a week, and I give tithes of all that I possess. I'm so righteous. I'm so holy. Lord, you are so lucky to have me as your son. Look, you, Lord, is so lucky because you have me as a follower. I'm so holy that God was blessed to have me as a follower and worshiper. He didn't pray to God. The God he was praying to was himself. He was his own God because he thought to be perfect above others. He was his own God. Then he compared himself and saw himself as better than others. And when he was praying, he said, I am not like this tax collector. He even might have prayed out loud, by the way, I am not like this tax collector who comes here to pray. He made sure to pray out loud that the tax collector may hear that he had no chance of being heard. That's how the Pharisee thought, that he was just wasting his time. And the parable went on. And the tax collector, standing afar off, in other words, the publican didn't see himself worthy of getting close to the temple. Now you understand why the Pharisee shouted, because the tax collector was far in the back, because he wanted him to hear. Would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. The tax collector stood afar off, lowered his head, beat his breast, and said, I know I'm a sinner, full of sins. I tell you, Jesus goes on, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Usually, we hear the saying, the humble will be exalted. This is not what Jesus said. He said, those who humble themselves will be exalted. Not everyone who is humbled will be exalted, but those who humble themselves before God will be exalted. So what do we grasp from this parable? Dear friend, maybe you say, this Pharisee was indeed a proud person, arrogant. But we all have this Pharisee inside us. Did you know that? We tend, as I was speaking in the beginning, to justify ourselves, to be our own judge and solicitor, advocate. Our tendency is to judge ourselves favorably towards ourselves, even when we are wrong. Actually, our tendency is not only to judge and justify, defend ourselves. It's even worse. Our tendency is to make new laws. New laws for ourselves. So the things that are considered wrong, even by natural laws, okay? Laws that are written in our hearts, that everybody knows that is wrong. For example, to steal, to kill, to commit adultery, to betray. These are universal laws, regardless of the nation, the culture. They are ingrained in the human nature. It's wrong to lie. We have the tendency to create new laws for ourselves and say, it's not that wrong if this and that happens. In other words, if it's me doing it. If I have done it, for a good reason, then it's not that wrong. Our human tendency is to justify ourselves, is to absolve ourselves, is to do the wrong things and to call them right. This is in us. Jesus didn't speak about Pharisees only, but about the Pharisee inside us that wants to hide behind a facade of justice, holiness, but on the inside wants to do everything and not be accused of anything. Many live like this. Like this, many are being smart in the wrong way. They are deceiving others. They are true actors at work, at home, in the church. They are actors. Before others, it's yes, ma'am, yes, sir. That's it. But behind their back, that real person, which is the Pharisee, is doing all wrong and justifying themselves. If you ask them when they are found out, when they are found in sin, and ask them, why did you do that? They will have a justification. They will always have an explanation. In reality, this person does not believe in God. They don't, because when you do what is wrong, based on what you approve is right or wrong, it's because you made yourself your own God. In the parable, it's clear that the Pharisee prayed to himself. And when you do what is wrong and you absolve yourself, you made yourself your own judge, your own God. There's no one above you. And this is the worst sin. It's the most dangerous sin, because it's not a sin that you see as one. Let's be alert to this. This parable was about those who trust themselves and believed they were righteous and despised others. Beware of the Pharisee who exists within you. If today's video helped you and you know someone that could benefit from it, share it with them, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you may do so now. See you later.